Want to attract and convert more leads? Want to learn how digital PR, branding, and SEO can establish and build your brand identity? Welcome to the Market Movers Building Brands and Links with Linkifi podcast. We answer these questions and help you ramp up your brand visibility and credibility. Let's cut through the noise and make your business the talk of the town. We're your hosts, Nick and Chris. Let's get this show on the road.
Welcome to the Market Movers podcast. Today we're joined by Laricea Roman-Halliday, which could potentially be the best name we have ever had on the show, whose remarkable career in marketing spans major brands like Google, Huawei, and Microsoft. Currently leading marketing for Dorothy Perkins, Burton, and Wallis brands at Boohoo Group, Laricea combines deep industry knowledge with a keen sense for digital and offline integration to propel brand growth and user engagement. Finally, Laricea is also the author of the book, A Brand's Purpose, Less Unicorn, More Zebra for our US listeners, which explores the importance of purpose-driven marketing strategies over solely profit-driven approaches. Today, she's here to share insights from her journey and discuss cutting-edge strategies in growth and branding. Welcome, Laricea.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello, everyone. Looking forward to today's discussion.
All right, so to kick things off, you've worked with some really big companies, Google, Huawei, Microsoft, Tesco, to name a few. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you've come to work with such big companies.
Yeah, like looking back now, it makes me feel super old. So there you go, bear with me. So I'm originally from Romania and I've come to London to do my master's degree. I've always loved marketing and advertising. I remember since being a little child going to the cinema half an hour before just to make sure that I can get to see all the ads. And actually, so not avoiding ads, being very interested in them in magazines as well. So I decided that's what I want my career to be in. So I studied marketing. I didn't want to stay in London because, hey, the weather. But then 15 years later, I'm still here. So I came to study. And after I graduated my master's degree, I got a job straight away and I kind of worked my way up. I think my agency experience was really, really, really useful in order to get later more senior roles in the industry. I got exposed to quite a lot of brands and I was lucky enough to work on some really big ones. So I started off my career in paid search on Microsoft account, on PlayStation, which was very interesting. But then at some point it got very boring and I was like, I need to try something else. This marketing can only be about PPC. So I moved and worked on new business and then finally decided I want to experiment, display and social media. And that's how I got to work for Google. So I was the account manager at Essence. Essence still is Google's media agency. So I was looking after the Chrome family. So Chrome, the browser, and then Chromecast Chromecast, the stick, and then Chromebooks, the laptops. And it was very interesting because back then, kind of the ambition was to make Chrome number one browser, which, everyone's laughing at that today because it's ultimately the browser. I think pretty much everyone is using it on mobile phones and laptops and computers. So yeah, but that was my task back then. And then launching Chromecast was pretty incredible because I had a huge budget. As I said, I was the account manager then, and it was really hard work to be able to spend that sort of money wisely and hit the business metrics. So that was the ultimate career challenge at that point in time, which really helped me then work with the likes of Huawei, which obviously my team and I, we launched them in Western Europe. No one could even pronounce the name of the brand. And they were very unsure where they would sit in the market, given Apple and Samsung and the size of Apple and Samsung. But they've done really well and I'm quite proud of where they are now. And then moved into client side, decided that, I had enough of agencies and enough exposure to many brands and moved into gambling, which was quite a tough industry, I have to admit, and lots of lessons to be shared from that time. And then fashion, Boohoo Group, which again, similarly, very, very tough industry, especially given the current economical context and the sort of levels of competition from abroad. So yeah, it's been a very vast career, I would say, but lots of ups and downs and lots of learnings and lots of falls. And then that's how you learn, basically.
Fascinating journey from Chromecast launch to casinos to the fashion world. Fantastic. So that brings us to the current day. What does your role entail now then with the Boohoo Group? What does your day-to-day look like? What are you responsible for? Goals, achievements, that sort of thing?
Basically, all marketing channels. It's a very, very vast role, similar to the one at Party Casino before. So, all marketing channels from offline to online, from performance to brand, hitting, those business metrics on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, making sure that firstly, when I joined, crafting that brand strategy and then translating it into marketing campaigns across all channels. So really interesting lessons I've learned here is that in the fashion industry is very specific in terms of KPIs. So at other companies, I would be looking at marketing costs, literally purely at media costs. This is one industry, and the whole of retail is there, but fashion particularly, where returns come into play. And it's very important to take into consideration other metrics apart from your media costs when looking at how your marketing campaigns are doing. And when I start looking into the cost of returns, the cost of delivery, OPEX costs, and other internal costs, then it became clear that apart from 3 or 4 channels, we were bleeding money. So we were losing money for every order. And that was the case for social media, which was quite shocking because 80% of our budget was spent in social media. So basically, we would be losing tons and tons of money. It was like a leaking bucket. So when start adding the other costs, then the channels got reprioritized, and we clearly understood that is the like of search and affiliates and email that are working really, really well for us from a sale perspective, whereas a social media, a video, more content-based channels were more for like consideration and that first stages of inquiries into the brand rather than the purchase stage. So that was quite enlightening and again, very interesting from a retail perspective, but specifically from a fashion perspective when you start adding, because at the moment in fashion, I know that all brands are dealing with really high returns. And that's thank you, the pandemic for that, because people start ordering 5 dresses, they will only keep one because they're not sure about sizes. So that's on brand side.
It's become a way to shop as well, I think now, hasn't it? And I know a lot of my wife's friends or my brother's wife's friends, they'll just buy multiple items just to try them all on and pick which one they want to keep. So that's got to be a hard thing to manage within the industry. Yeah.
100%. And that's why I'm saying that unless you integrate it in your day to day and you're very well aware of it, it's going to lead your business to a lot of money loss in the mid and long term, which is not great. And also trying to kind of do something about it, which, as I said, I think that's the whole sizing problem that's on the businesses and that needs to be worked on, amended. There's a lot of technology nowadays to be able to stop that. But then the consumers also need to be a bit more environmental friendly and think about what are the consequences of doing that. And as you say, it has become a trend and it has been featured as a trend on various different social platforms. And it's a disaster for businesses, for people behind them, but also for the environment. Because if you think the emissions from like going backwards and forwards and all these orders and like reposting them, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. So yeah, some of these lessons, and it's still work in process on quite a number of things. But I think very interestingly, the competition has increased tremendously after a lot of players from abroad, especially from Asia, have come into play and they have inundated, like it's the search engines are overflown and social networks are overflown with companies like that, which is very hard to compete with because they have huge budgets compared to all the brands in UK. Probably if you put all the brands in UK together in fast fashion, you won't get to their budget. And then secondly, price. And it's funny because consumers want very low price, but they also want quality, but they also want environmental friendly goods, but they also want very well paid people for those companies. And something doesn't add up. It's like, got to make up your mind. What is it that you want? If it's low prices, well, you can't have that quality and you can't have good for the environment and you can't pay the fair wages, you will get your price. And that's pretty much it. So we've been trying to kind of hit a balance there where, try to move production as much as possible in Europe and UK, pay the correct wages and make sure the environmental impact is as low as possible. But that's reflected in the price, like the price can't stay low. And that's where you can't compete with them. So you can't compete in marketing budgets, you can't compete in price. So there's got to be other ways of like outsmarting them basically. And it's getting especially hard in fashion to outsmart them. So in terms of deploying the technology, AI and everything you've got at the moment to kind of make sure you target niche people with very strict like USPs. We might not have the cheapest price, but we have X, Y, and Z, or, we're doing this. That's why a very clear marketing strategy is super, super important, because it's the only way to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, yeah, it's carnage out there.
So as far as like brand message strategy goes, consumers are looking for all of that. So how do you think about the brand messaging and the strategy there? So you're saying consumers are kind of looking for everything. They want the cheapest items. They want things that are sustainable and eco-friendly. They want them made locally, but you can't provide all of that. So how should brands think about that strategy? How do they decide what they stand for, what narrative they're going to push? I see a lot of sites, a lot of e-com companies that they don't have a stance. They're just sort of in the middle. Is it better to come up with your angle and to really push that narrative hard?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And I think that the ones who are in the middle, to your point, they are going to slowly die, because you can't be in the middle. So it's impossible. Given the number of options people have these days, being in the middle is not an option. I think you've got to stand out at some things, and you've got to pick that something based on, one, your business. What's the business about? What's been standing for? What's your purpose ultimately? And secondly, talking to customers. And that's what I've done throughout my career when I was tasked to creating brand strategies. I think you get the best ideas in terms of how to communicate, what's the USP, and how to address people from the actual customers. So organizing focus groups, organizing one-to-one interviews with existing customers, ex-customers, and even people who have never shopped with you really, really provides the best ideas, because they know the brand best and they might see things that you are blind to. So I think that's what I've been doing. And data can't lie, right? Data is data, and that's it. So I strongly recommend really investigating the business itself, different stakeholders, different departments, and then also talking to the customers. And the conjunction of these two, you should be able to find something that stands out, that's unique to you, a reason why people have been buying from you. And it might just be, I don't know, free delivery and free returns. Great. If that's what you're good at, just carry on doing that and talk about it and start creating content about it and really, really push that. If you're environmental friendly, then you will have to talk about that and kind of start appealing to those people who are very sensitive to this topic. If that's price, then you go for price, or quality, that's quality, or designs, or I don't know, inclusivity, you name it. So if a business doesn't have anything, it sits there in the middle and it ticks a few boxes, but is not very good at anything, I would be very, very concerned about the future of that business. On the other hand, if it does, as I say, I think it's pretty straightforward to find it. You just need to invest some time and resources in getting the insight and then translating it into a marketing strategy, into campaigns, and then creating content and really standing out for that, to the point that when you ask someone about the brand, that would be the first thing that would come to mind, which is ultimately what you want to happen.
I think that's super interesting. And actually, to circle back on something you said earlier about social becoming extremely crowded, I think our listeners would love to know from an expert where you're having most success with building the brand and reaching the ideal customer based on the message that is your differential. Are you having success with paid social, organic social? You mentioned that you were doing really well in the world of affiliate. Obviously, in recent months, we've had quite a big Google update with some affiliates being seriously hurt with their organic traffic. I'm wondering if you've noticed that with your sales and where you're seeing the best ROI.
Yeah, so I think the first part of the question regarding social and what works, what doesn't work. So as I mentioned earlier, for fashion industry, I generally don't believe that Facebook, or at least not for fast fashion, for the well-known brands, I don't think that social media really works as a sales channel, given the high number of returns, or at least not from the perspective of my brands. So I think social media works, but you've got to be very, very careful how you're using it, and just use all the tricks and things you can use from this in order to really, really make those campaigns better. So basically, what worked for us for social media was surprisingly user-generated content. So we did A/B testing in terms of your typical model, and then start using the content that users were posting on social media, but also start using the content that influencers were creating. So when we did an A/B testing, it became very, very clear that the more natural the content was and close to reality and down to earth, people were associating themselves a lot more with that content and they were engaging a lot more with it. In terms of generating sales, as I said, I've taken social media out of that equation because it just doesn't work for us. It's a channel that enables you to reach out to potentially more people, engage with them, and remind them that you're there. But I don't think there is a channel that works, at least not for us, to drive those sales. In terms of future kind of creative strategy for us, it's definitely based on the test. After we discover this, we definitely want to go forward with this. And it makes sense. And it's also cheaper from a creative perspective, if you think about it. And you can really leverage AI in order to generate a lot of variations. So once you have core few images, a few messages, you've got your segmentation. We want to talk about what's your USP to the point earlier. I think you can definitely use AI and AI tools to kind of generate a lot, not to say millions, but a lot of copies and then start testing what works, what doesn't work. Because, yeah, it's very interesting. As a marketer, you'd expect that something works, and then you see that a video that you would not give one chance works really, really, really well, and it blows all the metrics. So consumers have changed a lot. It's not how it used to be. It was simple before. It's super complicated now. And just looking at the consumer journey itself, before we're talking about a linear consumer journey, when I started my career, now it's basically come like a mad child's design, if you like. Went out of home to an SMS, to a push, to social community, got back, went in the shop, then he went back again, installed the app, finally made a purchase after seeing a gazillion channels or just one. So it's very hard. It's very hard to track. It's very hard to understand. It's a mess. So I think that nothing that was standing before, I think at the moment we actually live in an era where marketing is being rewritten, if you like. And I think after this, people will have to write new books, and what they're going to study in schools is going to be completely different from what I studied in school. So continuous testing, right? So I think that would be my advice, and deploying the current tech, which should help a lot. And both Meta and Google are really pushing these Performance Max and the Shopping Plus campaigns and things like that. That's all automatic and kind of pushes the best results. And I think they're doing it for a reason. I know a lot of my colleagues are very opponent to that and are really against it because it feels like it's taken away the liberty of a marketeer, of a specialist in the channel to go and optimize themselves, which I kind partially agree. But at the same time, if that thing frees up your time to do more testing, to think more of the strategy, create more content, to come up with more ideas, to get your measurement in place, I think that's brilliant and I've got nothing against it. And it still works. It's still driving those results. So I don't see why would you have anything against it. So make the most of the tools that are available at the moment. In terms of comparison with other channels for ROI, the second part of your question, I think I've been working with affiliates for many years now. And what I really like about affiliates is that you pay for an actual transaction. So depending on, which industry you're in and how you're negotiating your contract, I think that in both gambling and fashion, I loved it because I could pay at the end of 30 days when I knew that that lead would have stayed with me for at least 1 month and played a few games and didn't go away after they used the welcome bonus offer, or the person returned the dress in 2 days, but I paid for the transaction anyway and I pay for the return as well. So that's why I love affiliates, because it's the true cost of media, which is fantastic. And yes, they might get damaged in the future by the cookieless world and all the restrictions around them, but I think they've always found a way around, and people will always want to consume content. They'll want offers and things like that. So I think they'll always subscribe, and first party data for affiliates is going to grow more and more. So I'm not too worried about them being able to come out of this in one piece. So in terms of, ROI, I think is definitely affiliates for me stands out as a very strong channel. I don't know about other industries, but definitely in gambling and retail, it's a very, very strong channel, if not the strongest.
For the affiliates, was there a noticeable drop in affiliate referrals in the last couple months? The last 2 Google updates have been just absolutely brutal for affiliate sites. So I'm curious if you saw that on your end.
Not really, to be honest, because I think we've got such huge volumes for fashion. That's not been the case. Also, we work with a lot of affiliate influencers, which is a very interesting channel actually for fashion. where you pay them again after 30 days. So people have made the order, they return or not return, and then you pay them. And it's a very interesting and brutal way of working with influencers. Not many influencers work like that, but that's how they kind of sell themselves. And we've actually developed a program dedicated to affiliate influencers. And I like to call them affiliate influencers because I just don't think they're your usual influencers, right? Like they only work on hardcore sales and they hit those numbers, and it's brilliant. So to your question, not massively. Yes, there's been some drop, but like not massively. And I think it makes it up in volumes, basically, because they'll always have the sort of affiliates we work with, the first party data is massive. And I think it's really up to them on how they leverage that, then use it in order to communicate about their partners. So I think the better they are at this, the more sophisticated they are at this, the more strong they're going to be against any sort of derailings, such as the last one.
They are very resilient, aren't they, affiliates? And I think that ultimately they're not confined to just Google. And to speak to what you said earlier about natural social doing well, I imagine you have affiliates absolutely killing it on social, wearing the clothes, talking about the clothes, and then directing to the affiliate link.
Yeah, 100%. As I mentioned earlier, we actually developed a program just for affiliate influencers. So just running it on social media. And I'm not talking about displays, but purely on social media, social content. And it's great because it's very rich content. It also does a bit of a branding job, if you like, which I absolutely love. It's not pure sale because it's engaging, it's funny, it fits the brand, or it should fit the brand and the overall strategy and the overall direction. So I think it's a massive win-win. And these ones who generate hardcore sales, it's very easy for people to see if it's just done for money or if they genuinely believe in their product. I mean, one of the affiliates we work with, she manages to sell like these toilet cleaners, but she does such cool content about them that you're like, oh my goodness, how can it be so funny and so cool and so engaging to talk about toilet cleaners? That is ridiculous. But I was impressed, like genuinely impressed, because she uses them and she actually believes in them and the product is really good. And you can see that in her content. And I think that's where I'm trying to get to, is that this is a cliche now, but when the content is genuine, it sells. And it is what it is. It's still the case after so many years, when we've been talking about this for many years.
So I'm curious, what is it like competing with brick and mortar stores? So you have like the giants of the industry. How is that competing as an e-com only platform? What kind of challenges do you see around that?
I think it's a very good question because it's very hard, especially for the three brands. So ex-Arcadia brands, which used to have shops, and they didn't all of a sudden. So everyone initially thought they're gone. Like if you would type the name in Google, it would come up. Are they still exist? Are they still around? So I think that, yeah, it's very, very hard when you lose the shops because one, that generated a lot of the returns, especially the target audience for these three brands. They love to go to the shop and try on. Even like for Wallace, all the ladies, they love to make a day of it, right? Like they would go with their girlfriends, they would have some lunch, they would enjoy it. They would literally make a day of it, or go with their daughters or their family and friends and make it an experience, make it a day out. They would definitely enjoy it. They wouldn't see it as a chore. Oh, I've got to go in and buy a dress. It's like, not really. So it was very, very hard, and it still is, because one, they can't look at the quality anymore. And two, there's this always continuous sizing issue. And three, I think it's, again, when you go into a store, even if not many people are going into stores a lot these days, it's a completely different experience, right? And you can cross-sell and you can enhance that experience a lot more than someone being on a website and specifically going for the dress or whatever. So I think that experience is really hard to replicate online. I'm not saying it's impossible. Again, like I am looking at the current tech and what you can do. Videos, reviews from other people, pictures from normal people, how they look, and very, very granular description, which again, I'm looking at AI. How can it help to write better and longer descriptions of what the item is? So trying to replicate it, but it very much, to your question, it really, really impacts the performance. And I think it's definitely an advantage to have at least some pop-up shops, if it makes sense. Every now and then, having some pop-up shops. I was hosting a conference last week and we had the CMO of Alibaba, and he was basically saying how amazing their pop-up stores have been for the brand and how they brought the brand to life and how they managed through those pop-up stores to actually enhance the user experience and the perception of the brand for the existing customers, because they would be selling all sorts of things and also expensive things, not just cheap things. So those pop-up stores really managed to attract a different type of crowd that they would have never managed to attract online because of the perception. So I think it's a disadvantage because of the cost as well, and high street is dying and all that. But I think it's got its advantages, and definitely it's important for customers ultimately to be able to go and feel and see and play with the good.
That's super interesting as well. I mean, you just said what I was going to say, which is the death of the high street. It seems like customers want to touch, feel, hold, try on, and yet they're not patronizing the shops when they're there, which means we've lost them. We've moved to online, and yet it's an obstacle for you to compete with those that remain. You mentioned that you were testing and looking at the tools. I was interested, is you talking that maybe there's some form of AI integration or an advancement where people can have a much better understanding of how that garment is going to look on them? These are sorts of things that we can expect to see in the future.
Yeah, I'm hoping so, because as I mentioned, I think the biggest problem is returns. And I think part of this problem is people's inability to better understand the item. Like we get a lot of returns saying, oh, size is a bigger issue. And I think if we would be able to kind of show it on a variety of body sizes, of heights, of skin colors, I think that would be very beneficial for people to understand how does it look like on a pear shape body or whatever.
Hourglass.
Yeah, there's so many body shapes, right? And a dress looks completely different on each one of them, or a pair of shoes. So I think utilizing AI to kind of bring this sort of like body shapes, because we've got millions of products, you wouldn't be able to shoot what to have. What I think there are like 6 or 7 body types, but anyhow, let's presume there are 6 or 7 body types, and then imagine how many variations, right, for each product to kind of get people to understand. And also, if you want to have some inclusivity in terms of skin color, again, to have 3 or 4 skin colors, like that is mad when you think about it. You wouldn't be able to shoot that with real models, whereas AI would be able to help you there. And that would be very useful because it would be very inclusive of everyone, of all body shapes, of all skin colors, etc., etc. But also it would help people better understand how it looks, so they don't have to order that many sizes and that many models, etc., etc. So I'm hoping from that perspective that the tech will come and help us. I mean, we're testing a few things, and I know other brands are a lot more advanced in terms of that, but the investment is quite substantial, especially at this point in time. So, there's got to be a balance. And then I guess that, yeah, in terms of what I would love to see more of is personalization. Everyone's talking about, AI and personalization, but I'm not seeing much of it. I'm just purely talking about as a consumer. I'm still getting, I'm buying things from very big brands, and then 2 days later, I'm getting a discount. And I'm like, why would you send me that? Like, that is horrendous what you've just done. Or I just bought something for my husband, and then they keep sending me the same mail stuff, which I'm not interested in. And I unsubscribe and I don't want to hear about them. Like, please understand that that was an occasion. I am not a male, and I'm not interested in trousers for male. So these sort of like really basic things, which actually is not even about cookies, because this is first party data and understanding that. So it's been pretty hard because it's hard to manipulate that much data. But hopefully with the help of AI, would be able to slice and dice that data and deploy it a lot quicker and easier to just make sure that those sort of mistakes never done before, because it's 2024 and receiving such emails and communications from big brands makes you think, oh my God, like seriously, guys? So hopefully we're getting there slowly.
It would be good for consumers as well, because you think about all the times you just feel spammed, and it's just marketing practices. They're not meaning to spam you, but you're getting way more untargeted ads from these companies. So optimizing that would be a better experience for the consumer as well.
100%.
So earlier you mentioned your top channels, which I thought was a bit surprising with social. And you mentioned Google as one of the top ones. What percentage of your traffic and revenue is coming from Google?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the strictly performance, so affiliates would be the best performing one, and Google would be number 2. And within Google, I would say it's 80% shopping and 20% search. If you were to ask me this question 2 years ago, it was the other way around. It was 80% search and 20% shopping. So it's insane how it just changed in a matter of 24 months. Shopping is becoming so powerful. And if we look at it from a consumer perspective, if I search for something, I don't scroll anymore. I go straight to products and that's it. And I'm not looking anywhere else. Like I've got everything I need there. I'm not bothered to go to the main page and scroll. So, and that's really affecting also SEO. And us as a company, and like all my previous jobs, I was a very big fan of SEO and investing in SEO and organic because it would help you build a long-term presence. Whereas now people are not even going on the search pages anymore. So like, why are we doing it? And then you've got so many ads until you get to the organic one. There's like, people are not looking. So it's bringing a lot of like hardcore implications for the other channels as well. But to your question, I would say in terms of overall traffic, it's probably around 30-40%. The rest would be affiliates and other organic channels.
And how are you optimizing to appear in those Google shopping blocks? Like what strategies are you implementing? Have you got any strategies that you could recommend for smaller e-com stores that are looking to utilize that real estate in the SERPs?
I think it's very hard work with shopping, and it's been very hard work. So first of all, like formulating a strategy, because at the beginning we would just be uploading pictures and pretty much using the same principles as we would be using for search. But then it became obvious that there are so many other things. So I think we very much at this point in time rely on Performance Max, which I think it works really, really good for us. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in letting these AI tools optimize and give you ideas about what you can do, because I've noticed in the account numerous times a lot of things that actually my team and I haven't thought of. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I never thought of doing that. It's like, but that is so obvious. So why have we not done that before? So definitely the strategy there is in line with the overall brand strategy. And it kind of translates from those USPs that we talked earlier. We're trying to get to appeal to a niche market that would be less price sensitive, but more focused on inclusivity and seeing all sorts of body shapes and skin colors, etc., and seeing designs in all sorts of sizes from 8 to 24, rather than just go after price because we can't compete there. And then, in terms of targeting, we could be burning a lot of money on a daily basis there. But again, it's always a set budget and it's optimized towards ROI. I always believe in that sort of targeting, because otherwise you could be spending a lot of money. And based on Performance Max and obviously the experts in the team going and, running their tactics on a daily basis. But that's kind of pretty much it. I think we're far from being very advanced in shopping, and I think there's a lot more to learn there. But yeah, hopefully we're going to get there.
I wanted to ask you about your book. So you wrote a book on branding. So I wanted to ask, what do companies get wrong about branding? And then newer companies, how should they think about building their brand?
I wrote this book during the pandemic because I got very, very annoyed at greenwashing. So especially during the pandemic, a lot of brands all of a sudden became so careful about that, so nurturing towards the environment and the society and doing well and blah, blah. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, you've never done this until now. And I'm pretty sure that once the pandemic is over, you're not going to do this. You're going to revert back to just sell. So I got pretty angry. And then also throughout my career, I worked for brands who actually just didn't care. They just wanted sales. It didn't matter at what cost. So the purpose of the book was basically to kind of raise awareness amongst consumers and marketeers about brand purpose and what it is. And the fact that a lot of the new companies are in a really good position because they're just forming. So they can be formed, be created for a good cause and from a point of like, I want to help with that. So one of the examples in the book is Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes was created to help children in Africa to get a pair of shoes, because there are millions of children in Africa of all ages who walk barefoot. And the owners went and visited, and it was heartbreaking. So he decided that he wants to create a company who would donate a pair of shoes for as many children in Africa as possible for each sale. And that's what they've been doing. And it's been amazing. Patagonia, another example. In the book, there are tons of examples of companies that basically they are purposeful brands. They are zebra brands. So the title around zebras, because everyone was like, what's with the zebra? Zebras are social animals. They live in communities. They work together. They help each other. They stick together. It's not one for themselves. A unicorn is just one of its own, living for itself and being very full of themselves, not doing anything for anyone else. So these sort of brands, I wanted to highlight them and to kind of explain the whole process behind it and how can existing brands, brands have been around for years and years, can retrofit that purpose as well. But just to raise awareness that you can't just talk about purpose for like a campaign to make some sales and then you stop. And then you start again when you remember about it to make some more sales and then you stop. Like it's either a purpose or it's not. It can't be whenever it suits you to generate some sales because it just sounds nice and trendy and it's good for the environment. So that's kind of the context of the book, and it had great success so far. And for each sale, I donate all the money towards planting trees, talking about purpose. So yeah, I hope some of your listeners would be interested and make a purchase and read about it, because I'm really genuinely hoping that consumers are going to buy more of those brands and they're going to become aware of the difference between a brand who does well versus a brand who only uses it as a reason to generate more sales.
So mission driven is the key. Bomber Socks, I think, is another good example. They donated a pair of socks for every socks purchased. It's really interesting. So do you genuinely think that that is something that all brands now need to have as part of their arsenal? Real mission and something which needs to be implemented, not just for the purpose of driving quick sales, but like a long lasting ethos for the company?
I genuinely think so. And it's not just because it's trendy, but consumers demand that. So if you look in consumer studies from all over the world, and for the past 5-6 years, so well before the pandemic, but even more so after, it's becoming very clear that consumers are expecting companies to take a stance, to have a point of view on all sorts of issues, from the conflict in Gaza to the war in Ukraine to hunger in Africa. Consumers expect companies to have a point of view and to do something about things, because consumers trust companies more than they trust politicians. And that's the current context we're living in. So that's why I think, because the expectation is there, so the opportunity for companies is there. So I think this is their chance to actually do something about it. And also looking around us in the world, how much bad is everywhere. And you turn on the news channel, it's all bad. It's horrendous what's going on everywhere. I think, again, it's an opportunity to do something good and try to make a difference. No matter how small or big it is, I think every single company can make a difference. So it's not having it for the reason that it's trendy and everyone is talking about it and marketeers love it and it sells well. No, not for that, to be clear, but purely from a point of view that consumers' expectations are completely different these days. It's not just a transaction, it's not just selling something, it's basically a long-term relationship between brand and consumers. And part of that long-term relationship, there is this need to get involved and to do something about it, to comment about things, to do things. And then consumers are going to reward them with their share of wallet, because if they like what a brand is doing and they like how they responded, they will buy more. If not, they will boycott the brand and they're not going to buy anymore. So I think, yeah, it's very, very important from these two perspectives, a moral one, but also a consumer one, to have a brand purpose and to try to look at things differently and to try to give something back, because just taking with two hands is not right.
A great answer. Well, Laricea, we're coming towards the end of the podcast now. So I just want to ask before we finish about digital PR, link building, maybe as well, if you could touch on. Are you involved with that? Is that something that's actively done across the brands that you work with? And then as a wider issue, are you engaging in digital PR? And how are you seeing that play out for you and your companies?
Yeah, I think being in fashion, it's always like the fear. You wake up in the morning and you see what other scandal the company is getting into. Same with gambling. You're in fear, like waking up in the morning, what other fine am I going to get today? So it's always a digital PR, especially in these two industries and possibly other ones as well. You live in that fear of what's next, who is going to unveil what and what's happening. And perhaps linking back to the purpose, that's why as a company, if you are 100% transparent, if you're honest, if you have published the whole journey and all that, there is no fear of anything. And the digital PR doesn't even have to exist, if it makes sense, because this is who I am. I'm transparent. This is all you need to know about me. You can track everything I'm doing. There's no chance of getting into any trouble, and I will have a pristine and beautiful image. And that's it. I don't have to manage my reputation online specifically, because my reputation is what I do on a daily basis, and it's all clean and nice and beautiful. So to your question, yes, it's got to be managed, and it's not always easy. Especially a couple of years ago, there was a huge scandal about wages in UK, and someone went with a hidden camera and they were filming the workers in UK, and we made a big fuss about having that factory in UK. But then they went and filmed them, and it was not great. And we're like, oh my goodness me, what happened there? So it's hard work. For fashion, as I said, the industries like fashion and gambling, it's really hard work. And on the other side, the link building exercise, we use it a lot in order to improve that SEO and in order to grow that SEO and create a presence, which has been going really, really well. And we managed to kind of own certain categories which we wanted to own, because obviously you can't do everything. So we decided on a few categories we want to own, and we want to be kind of, you talk about that category, we want people to say the name of our brands. So that's what we've been working on, to kind of build that reputation and that presence organically in that specific sector, in that specific niche category. But it's hard work. And to my point earlier, sometimes you wonder, is like, well, if no one's looking at these organic searches and these links anymore, then why am I doing this? So it's big questions at the moment, to be honest with you. But that's how it's split, to your point, between catastrophes and scandals, and then trying to build that organic presence, which is harder and harder to get, basically, because of the big companies. They do have a specific objective with that, don't they?
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, Laricea, it's been amazing having you on, hearing about your story. To wrap things up, any parting advice you'd like to give our audience? And then also, if you could tell us where they could find you.
Cool. No, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I love the questions you guys asked me. In terms of advice, I think staying true to yourself and having a real clear vision and mission for everything you do in marketing, no matter what the channel is, and always respecting and understanding the customer. So by respecting, I'm talking all the targeting and how you're deploying it, and understanding, to my points earlier, that I think it's the most important thing to talk to your customers, no matter where you are in brand's journey. Continuously ask for feedback, and you'll be surprised how many amazing ideas you get from your actual customers and non-customers as well. So yeah, that would be my advice. And then in terms of where you can find me on LinkedIn. So just search for my name. And obviously, if you want the book, there's a soft copy, and then there's the Amazon copy as well, where it can be purchased. And then, yeah, social channels. There are a lot of YouTube links, because I'm doing a lot of conferences and quite a few podcasts, and I love to be a speaker. So there you go. You can just search for my name and you'll get quite a few results. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Laricea. Fantastic.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
And that wraps up this episode of Market Movers, Building Brands and Links with Linkifi. Big thanks to our parent company, Linkifi, the wizards behind turning ambitious businesses into standout brands. Hit up our website at linkifi.io and take the first steps towards brand greatness. Big shout out to Fame for making this podcast possible. Thanks for listening, folks. Stick around for more insights in our next episode. Catch you later.